The Gemini new moon is inviting you to stop projecting your insecurities onto others simply because you refuse to own your desires. Zodiac sign Gemini is a creative mastermind. The Gemini new moon is inviting you into a new reality. It's asking you to examine who you can be if you're willing to let go of who you think you are. The Gemini new moon is giving all of us an opportunity to release ourselves from the shackles of ignorance. Welcome back to the Aquarius podcast, where we talk about astrology and its connection to emotional intelligence. Gemini energy is notoriously hated by many people in the world of astrology because it's inherently triggering. Gemini asks you to question your reality. Most people don't really like that. We're going to go over what this Gemini new moon is bringing for all of us, internal issues, external issues over the next couple of weeks, how it impacts our relationships, and then we're going to leave this conversation with some concrete tools that you can use to navigate the tension of this moment. The Gemini new moon is asking, who are you? What do you think? What do you believe? Have you questioned what you believe? This Gemini new moon is bringing a conjunction to the sun, the moon, and Uranus. What's interesting about the Uranus placement is that it's happening at the Leo degree. Leo energy is ruled by the sun. It's the part of us that can never be hidden. This means that information is coming to us over the next couple of weeks that we won't be able to unsee. Internal discussion that we're having with ourselves about what's happening in our mind. The trine to the North Node also speaks to this transit being about spiritual alignment. You need to decide what you believe based on what you've analyzed. Gemini's power is in being able to reframe information, but its shadow is using words and analysis to avoid dealing with uncomfortable emotions. The Lilith in Sagittarius opposing this moon transit is going to stir up some emotions inside of us that are raw, emotions that we've suppressed. As you know, Lilith is all about freedom, rage, it's about indignation, refusal to submit, it's about trusting our instincts, it's about being wild. This energy is going to try to force you out of your comfort zone. And for some of you, you might choose to avoid that discomfort, that tension of what do I want to believe and what do I feel in my body to be true? The universe is asking you to harmonize those things. There are going to be some new revelations about some of your relationships. Some of them are going to be cooling off. It might be dramatic, but also quick. Uranus brings unpredictability wherever it is. So be open to that. Lilith looks crazy from the outside. But from the inside looking out, she's liberated. She's refusing to participate in her own enslavement. For some of us who've grown up to believe that our energy was too big, too wild, too free, too this, too that, too much, too blunt, that's usually the concern with Sagittarius. You're too honest, you're too direct, you're too unapologetic, you're too outspoken. Oftentimes, when people meet this energy in others and they haven't yet empowered themselves by opening up their own throat chakra to speak their mind, to stand in their power, to be themselves, and to own who they are, to own their story, good or bad, and to let people choose whether they want to rock with them or not rock with them based on who they authentically are, they judge. When people are in their low vibrational energy and they refuse to do the emotional and intellectual labor required to identify why it is that they refuse to own their voice, their power, their identity, when they meet other people who reflect that freedom to them, it's very triggering. It reminds them of the labor they haven't done. And oftentimes, instead of acknowledging that discrepancy and committing themselves to that labor, what they do is they make the other the enemy, because then they don't have to face the cowardliness in themselves. Their evolution really comes from speaking your truth, even if it's not polished. Gemini doesn't need certainty to communicate what it wants to communicate. It just needs to be honest in the moment. So ask yourself, what is it that I've been talking around instead of saying directly? Who or what am I afraid will leave if I say the thing plainly? A trigger is when your nervous system recognizes a wound, an old one, that you think is occurring in the present, but your mind hasn't quite caught up to the fact that this is an old wound that you're responding to. So it naturally fires off its army to defend yourself. Oftentimes when we're triggered, we don't even know we're being triggered. It's our behavior that communicates it, and our psyche has not yet connected the dots. I'm reacting this way because of this other thing from 20 years ago that felt exactly like this thing. Now, what's required for the brain to get to that connection is time. With Lilith opposing the new moon, what's going to be triggered are old wounds around feeling dismissed, being made to feel small. When we're being triggered, we're not being rational. We're not being logical. It's more of there's a threat. I'm under attack. I must defend myself. And the body takes over. This is why somatic work is so important, because the body sensation is going to come before the brain actually tells you what it is that you're reacting to. Gemini energy adds a specific twist to this reactive pattern with being triggered, because for Gemini, it shows up verbally. They get vocal, they over-explain, undercut with words. Their sarcasm is lethal, or they just go quiet mid-sentence just to let you know that your voice is insignificant. They rehearse arguments in their heads over and over again. The mind, that should be the tool that we use to empower ourselves, becomes a loop of fear. The new moon in Gemini is asking for a mindset shift. Think about what it is we're thinking about and why. He wants us to get curious about why do we think about it that way. But Gemini doesn't just want you to think, he wants you to think about how you think, and to widen the gap between what you get stimulated by, your triggers, right? And how you respond to your triggers. And in between the stimulation and the response, there's thought, there's reflection. A reflection is a light bouncing back. It's not necessarily an accurate reflection of what's happening in the present. It's just my vocabulary. The intensity of the feelings tell me about how deep the wound is, how big the perceived threat is, and my level of confidence in my ability to navigate the wound. Asking the question about what the other meaning of the thing is sets you free. Honest communication is a commitment that we make to one another for the sake of building healthy relationships. And healthy relationships require healthy responses to communication. And it's about saying what's true in a tone that is loving. It's not about reacting immediately to what feels uncomfortable or avoiding communication altogether. If you find yourself feeling triggered under this Gemini new moon, one question you can ask yourself is, what feeling am I trying to protect myself from? And then ask yourself, what would happen if I let myself feel this feeling, even for just 10 seconds before I react to it? Being wise is about being willing to ask questions of yourself. There is no wisdom without self-inquiry, because wisdom is derived from pain that has been metabolized, and that pain gets metabolized after analysis when we've removed the sting from it, and it's just factual material that we're analyzing from an emotional distance. Now let's go into the horoscope for each of the rising signs based on where this new moon transit is falling for you. Everybody's being invited to a new way of thinking, but for each person, it's going to come in a unique area. For Aries rising, 2 questions to consider. Where have I outsourced my beliefs to avoid the discomfort of forming my own? What does my resistance to other people's truths tells me about what I need to feel intellectually independent and sovereign? For Taurus rising, what deep truths am I avoiding because admitting it would mean losing control? What does my fear of vulnerability and intimacy teaches me about what safety actually means to me? For Gemini rising, am I choosing partners who reflect my unowned desire for freedom or my fear of freedom itself? What does the tension in my closest relationship reveal about my need for independence in relationship? For Cancer rising, where am I rebelling against routines that actually help me just because they feel restrictive? What does my resistance to discipline teach me about my need for meaning in my daily routines? For Leo rising, is my need to be seen as different actually blocking genuine self-expression? What does my fear of being ordinary teach me about what I actually need to feel creatively fulfilled? Virgo rising, what inherited belief or belief systems about home, family, tradition, Am I still living out loud without questioning? What does my discomfort with emotional mess at home teaches me about my need for honesty over order? Libra rising, where am I softening my words to create the peace? And at what cost to my truth? What does my fear of sounding too blunt teach me about my need to be heard accurately, not just liked? Scorpio rising, is my belief about what I deserve actually mine, or did I borrow it from someone else's value system? What does my relationship with money or self-worth teaches me about needing security that isn't tied to performance? Sagittarius rising, am I performing freedom or am I actually living it? What does my reaction to being told who I should be teaches me about my core need for self-determination? Capricorn rising, what belief systems about myself have I buried because it didn't fit who I was supposed to become? What does my tendency to self-isolate when overwhelmed teaches me about my need for unconditional acceptance? Aquarius rising, am I rebelling against the group or against my own need to belong? What does my discomfort with traditional community structures teaches me about the kind of belonging I actually deeply crave? And lastly, Pisces rising, whose definition of success am I unconsciously chasing? What does my resistance to visibility or authority teaches me about my need to lead on my own terms? So let's get into what you can do when you feel triggered under this Gemini new moon. Instead of overly consuming information, which is what Gemini does when they're triggered, try naming what you're feeling. Naming the emotion activates the prefrontal cortex and starts to deactivate your brain being hijacked by fear, okay? It's important to locate also where in the body you feel this tension. The more somatic we can make our emotional experiences, the more equipped we are at navigating them. When you can slow down enough to identify the emotion in the body, you can anchor yourself in the present rather than in the story from 20 years ago. After you've named the emotion, you've located it inside your body, ask the Gemini question. The Gemini question is the same every time, which is, what's the other interpretation of this? What else could this mean? What else could this be about? Gemini's gift is in its ability to hold multiple perspectives at the same time. They use it on themselves and they use it on other people. This new moon, being trine the North Node, is a green light from the universe about growth being a choice. Gemini governs how we think before we act. So the maturity here isn't about avoiding your feelings. It's rather about narrating how you think uniquely, asking yourself what fits in your narrative and what doesn't. Maturity shows up as the pause between the impulse we're feeling and the expression. For many of us who grew up with a lot of fear in the energy, there can be an impulse here to want this sure thing, to want to jump to conclusions because we like the sure thing. We want to be certain. What if curiosity is the only destination on our soul's journey? Gemini is asking us to pause between our impulses and the expression of our impulse. What story am I about to tell myself about this? And then choose the story that aligns with who we are and who we want to be. The Sun-Moon conjunction means thinking and feeling are going to be unified under this new moon transit. So there's less internal conflict in that way. You know, what I think is what I am, and what I think is what I do, and what I feel is what I'm doing. That alignment is really rare. So please use this moment with conscious decision making. Lilith, opposing this Gemini moon transit, puts your shadow directly across your conscious identity. It's kind of like a mirror being placed at the end of the hallway, and then you get there and you realize you were looking at yourself the entire time. It's impossible to avoid who you are. So as you walk towards it, you start to see yourself more clearly. In Sagittarius, the shadow often concerns truth that is unfiltered, or an appetite for truth that is unfiltered and that is not grounded. The parts of you that refuses to be domesticated for the sake of likability is going to be exposed. Integration doesn't mean becoming that shadow. It means acknowledging that it has a place at the table. Desire is nothing to be ashamed of. It's quite natural and human to seek pleasure, to desire pleasurable experiences, to crave it, to yearn for it, to go after it, to lust for it. What is the meaning of life without lust, without passion, without desire? Desire is information. It's not something to suppress, to be ashamed of. Vulnerability here looks like admitting that you want something. You've been told that you shouldn't want something that you want. It's okay to sit with that. It's okay to reconcile the differences between both of those ideas. It's okay to judge them objectively without acting on either of them. The risk here with Gemini energy, just as it is for all air sign energy, is projection. Oftentimes what we refuse to own, we want other people to hold for us. Integration here is about allowing the mirror to show you your shadows, okay? What you can't own in yourself will make you feel infuriated in others, especially anyone who's shameless about it. Whenever you meet others who own their desires fearlessly, the same ones that you're denying and that you're ashamed of, you're going to be triggered. Instead of making them the villain and making you the saint so you can feel good about your self-esteem, ask yourself, what does this person have permission to be or to do that I'm not giving myself permission to be and to do? Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication. I would encourage you to journal under this new moon. Say the unsaid out loud. Name the desire. Name it without judgment. Practice stating what it is that you want in a neutral language. As an example, I want more pleasures in relationships. I want more freedom in relationships. I want more joy. Before deciding what's reasonable, what's fair, how you're going to implement it, just name the thing, name the desire, name what you're yearning for, and own it. Make it your responsibility, your labor to manifest that in this universe. Inadvertently, when you meet somebody who's already where you want to be, you might feel triggered. Instead of shaming them for being who they are or shaming yourself for not being them, take 24 hours to process what you're experiencing. The Uranus unpredictability here with the Gemini new moon is going to bring a lot of quick fire energy. This is all intellectual stuff. It's important for you to catch what you're thinking about and why you're thinking about it that way. Instead of trying to resolve the tension between security and freedom, comfort and honesty, why not try holding both of them as true simultaneously? This is Gemini's superpower. They do this so beautifully, and that's how they've developed so much tolerance for ambiguity, making room for what is uncertain. A huge marker of emotional maturity is being able to make room for what we don't know. Certainty is hardly ever a good marker of intelligence. Curiosity is where it's at. In our relationships, the Lilith opposition is going to stir up some conflict because Lilith wants to be free, especially in Sagittarius, who's already the explorer of the Zodiac. The resilience building move under Lilith in Sagittarius is honest conversations. It's not the avoidance of words. It's not the overusage of words with over-explaining. It's about saying the thing, honestly, shortly, and to the point. Sagittarius really respects short and honest conversations over long-winded explanations that make you feel justified in whatever it is that you did that you know deep down was not the right thing to do. For Sagittarius, transparency is a sign of emotional maturity. The Gemini new moon asks you to trust, not me, not them, but yourself. Trust that you still have some growing to do. Trust that your voice is evolving. Trust that you don't need to be perfect, to be honest. Trust that the friction that you're feeling between what you truly want, which is your desires, and who you identify as right now, which is your schema, right, of how the world operates, your set identity. Trust that the tension between that polarity isn't really a problem to solve, but a polarity to hold. Holding it in and of itself is a sign of emotional maturity because no light can exist without its shadow. No truth can exist without misinformation. Let this be the cycle where you choose curiosity over certainty, where you choose asking questions over blindly believing what you're told. Wisdom is found in the ability to sit with life, and life is full of ambiguity and complexities. Not everything can be put in black and white boxes, and that's okay. That's what makes the rainbow a more beautiful option. There's so much life out there when you give yourself permission to be who you want to be. I look forward to reconnecting with you on June 29th for the full moon in Capricorn. Thank you for listening to the Aquarius podcast. You can book your astrology reading at intuitivehealing.com. You can also watch videos at Intuitive Healing here on YouTube for Astrology 101 content. Listen to the Aquarius podcast on Spotify, as well as here on YouTube for your horoscope. If you're interested in astrology and love connections, you can visit at Styled Under Libra. And of course, for health and wellness and holistic healing, visit at Styled Under Virgo for all of your astrology content. Thanks so much for watching.